The Boston Celtics have been very close to finally winning their 18th championship, which would be the most in NBA history, but have continuously fallen just short. In the 2021 season, Boston, with a 51-31 record, advanced to the NBA Finals, but were defeated by Stephen Curry and the Warriors dynasty. Then the following season, they would reach the Eastern Conference Finals to face their rivals, the Miami Heat. After Miami took a 3-0 lead, Boston would make a comeback, tying the series at 3-3. Miami would then win Game 7, partially because of Jason Tatum getting injured early in the game. Now, with a commanding lead in the Eastern Conference, can the Celtics, led by Tatum and Jaylen Brown, finally win it all? Well, let's start off by looking at why the Celtics have been so successful this season. The Boston Celtics lead the league in win percentage and have a 46-12 record. However, it is important to note that the Eastern Conference has been weaker than the Western Conference this year. At the time I am making this video, the first and second place teams in the East, Boston and Cleveland, are separated by 8 games, and in the West, Minnesota and Oklahoma City, 1 game. Boston is 4th in points per game with 121 points, trailing only Indiana, Milwaukee, and Oklahoma City. The Celtics also lead the league in rebounds per game with 47.1 and are 18th in the league for assists with 26.3 per game. So it seems like Boston has been pretty consistently at the top of the league for most major stats. So how do they match up against some of the best teams in the league? Let's start with the East, where despite the Celtics' large lead over the conference, they face several threats including the defending MVP, Joel Embiid. Boston is 3-1 against the 76ers this season, with the one loss coming earlier in the season on November 8th, 2023. Although he is currently out with an injury, he hopes to return before the end of the season for a potential postseason run. The 3-1 record is promising for the Celtics, however Embiid only played in 2 of those games, one of them resulting in a defeat for Boston. Even with all this, Philadelphia might not be Boston's biggest threat. The Cleveland Cavaliers, Milwaukee Bucks, and New York Knicks will all have a chance to take down the Celtics in the playoffs, even though they are all at least 7 games behind Boston. But what about the Miami Heat? The Miami Heat are currently 8th in the East, just like last year, where they made a surprising trip to the NBA Finals. Assuming they survive a play-in tournament, which could feature a dangerous team like Orlando or Indiana, the defending Eastern Conference champs might be the Celtics' biggest threat to a return to the NBA Finals. So how has Boston matched up against Miami this season? The Celtics are 3-0 against the Heat this season, with no other scheduled games between the 2 remaining. The Heat were pretty healthy during these games, although Jimmy Butler did miss a recent February 11th matchup. It is important to keep in mind that the postseason is very different from the regular season. Anything could happen when the playoffs start, but right now the Boston Celtics certainly look like the favorites to win the Eastern Conference. So what about the Western Conference? What teams could potentially defeat Boston in an NBA Finals matchup? As we've already mentioned, it is more competitive out west, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, Oklahoma City Thunder, and defending champions Denver Nuggets all fighting for first place. Let's start with the defending champion Nuggets. Denver is led by the 2-time MVP and favorite to win it again this year, Nikola Jokic. If we compare Jokic and the Celtics' best player Jason Tatum, it certainly looks a little more promising for Denver. Jokic averages 25.8 points per game, 12.3 rebounds per game, and 9.3 assists per game, while Tatum averages 27.1 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, and 4.8 assists per game. But what about team stats? Boston leads Denver in win percentage, points per game, and rebounds per game. Denver leads Boston in assists per game. The Nuggets are 1-0 against the Celtics this season, making this an interesting potential matchup for Boston. This was the Celtics' first loss at home this season, impressive considering the game was played in January. The 2 teams will play each other again, this time in Denver, on March 7th. Now let's move on to the other top MVP candidate, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and his team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. If we compare SGA and Tatum, each team's star player, then it seems like the Thunder have the advantage. SGA is averaging 31.2 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, and 6.5 assists per game, and Tatum is averaging 27.1 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, and 4.8 assists per game. Now looking at team stats, OKC slightly leads Boston in points per game with 121.2 to Boston's 121. The Thunder also lead Boston in assists, but not in rebounds. Boston is 0-1 against OKC this season, but has another meeting scheduled for later this year in Boston. Now let's look at one more team in the West, the currently first place Minnesota Timberwolves. Boston actually leads Minnesota in points per game by a pretty large amount, 121 to 113.7. They also lead Minnesota in rebounds, but trail them in assists. The Celtics are 1-1 against the Wolves this year, with no other scheduled meetings this season. So what does all of this mean? The Boston Celtics are clearly a pretty good team. They should be expected to make it to the NBA Finals, even though they will face many challenges. Even though this video mostly highlights, at least in the Eastern Conference, Philadelphia and Miami, there are several teams who can challenge Boston. The already mentioned Cavaliers, Bucks, and Knicks, but also the Magic and Pacers, who both beat Boston during the in-season tournament. However, Jason Tatum is a MVP-level player with a championship-level team surrounding him. A team that includes great players like Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, and Jrue Holiday, just to name a few. Add that together with the experience of this team, led by coach Joe Mazzulla, and this team should be able to win a championship. However, in the Western Conference, they face more competition. Denver is looking to defend their title, and it will be difficult to defeat the favorite for MVP, Nikola Jokic, or OKC, with another MVP candidate, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They might not have the same experience as the Nuggets, but the Thunder could definitely defeat Boston in a playoff situation. Do not forget about the Timberwolves either. They are currently leading the Western Conference and could also defeat Boston. None of the three teams mentioned have a losing record against the Celtics. The Nuggets and Thunder both have winning records against the Celtics. Just like in the East, there are teams in the West that this video did not really talk about that could win a championship. Teams like the Clippers, Suns, and Pelicans, just to name a few. In conclusion, the Boston Celtics have a great opportunity to win their 18th championship. In fact, right now with their league-leading win percentage and experience, along with being led by a MVP-level player like Jason Tatum, they should be considered the favorites. However, just because they are the favorites doesn't mean they are guaranteed success. They will certainly face challenges in their own conference. It could be from a rival like the Miami Heat or the defending MVP Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. That, along with their questionable success against the best teams of the Western Conference, such as Denver, Oklahoma City, and Minnesota, failing to establish a winning record against any of the three. For now, this is a great team who knows how to win, and we should expect them to keep winning, both in the regular season and the postseason. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.